Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson, and it's so great to have you here with us on this Tuesday, January 4th, 2023. Our Duke Blue Devils played in Big Monday last night in the ACC and unfortunately dropped their sixth game of the season, losing 78-75 on the road at Virginia Tech inside Cassell Coliseum. Really tough night for Jon Scheyer and the Blue Devils as they pick up their sixth loss of the season. We'll recap all of that here on today's show with my good buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe our podcast for free wherever you get your podcasts. Also, subscribe to our page on YouTube to watch the show daily. Locked On Blue Devils, your one-stop shop for all things Duke athletics. You can follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils, and I'm on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. Without further ado, let me bring on my good pal from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast, Josh Cox, who's now with us here on the program today. And Josh, boy, oh boy, what a tough night it was last night for our Dukies.
Yeah, it sure was. I mean, obviously we know that we've not had success there in Blacksburg. But man, we really could have come out of there with a win last night, and it just didn't happen. And what can you say?
Duke started the game on a 7-0 run, jumped out right out of the gates very quickly, trailed by 7, however, at halftime. Did take the lead in the second half for a few possessions here and there, but ultimately not able to come up with enough shots and plays at the very end. A controversial call at the beginning of the game blew Twitter up, and we'll get to that at some point. And then also mixed in all of this is the injury sustained by Dariq Whitehead. And a lot of folks really worry about the severity of that lower leg injury, which at the time of our recording, we have no update on Dariq Whitehead's status moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you see an injury like that where there's no, there's no ankle turn, there's no knee flex, and you see him grab, I mean, there's, your mind goes in many different directions, but, who knows? Obviously, there's no, it's not my job to speculate on that. But man, it doesn't look good at all. And, he was back there at the end of the game, with ice on his leg and on crutches.
That's right.
But, I wouldn't expect, if we're going to see Dariq at all the rest of the season at all, I wouldn't expect it anytime soon. And this team has got to regroup. And I will say Dariq did carry us for moments during this game tonight before he went out with his injury. I mean, that first half, there were times when he was the only person that could hit a shot. Yeah. And so it's a huge void. He is arguably our most talented player on the roster. And so moving ahead without him is going to be even more difficult.
No doubt about that. Yeah, a tough blow there for the Blue Devils. And again, we'll see the severity of the Dariq Whitehead injury moving forward. But yeah, you take a look at what he was able to do. 2 of 2 from 3, an efficient 4 of 6 from the floor for those 10 points. He made the very first 3-point jump shot of the game for Duke, really starting to come into his own form. And other guys are going to have to step up. This Duke team now at 14-6 overall. They are pretty much dead even in the middle of the pack in the ACC at this point of the season. Virginia Tech, by the way, had lost 7 consecutive games before picking up a win tonight against Duke. So all in all, you put all of that together, and man, just a really, really tough night for our Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, it's interesting as you have this pulled up, the box score. It's interesting to see. It looks like Coach Scheyer is really starting to consolidate that bench a little bit. You've got Jacob Grandison, Jalen Blakes both playing fewer than 10 minutes tonight. And that is even with the Whitehead injury in the second half. And so, I don't know what that looks like the rest of the season. But, I think some adjustments are going to have to be made. This team cannot continue down the path it's going, or else this team won't make the NCAA tournament. So at the end of the day, something's got to give. And so, Dariq was incredible. I was in the game, as we mentioned. And then, of course, this was a Kyle Filipowski, incredible. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But
Yeah.
you got to give credit where credit's due there. But then also for them, listen, they showed up. Their guys hit shots. I mean, they hit shots better than they've hit all season long. In fact, the only other time I think they shot like this was when they beat Carolina, their only other conference win. So, congratulations, Hokies. You show up to play your two biggest games of the year, and then you don't play the rest of the games, evidently. But,
Yeah. 78-75 final score. Virginia Tech knocks off Duke. The Hokies, an impressive win over the Blue Devils, who they had a lead as large as 11 points in the first half of play. But again, Duke did a really nice job coming out of the gates. Second half adjustments were pretty impressive to get back in the ball game and to be so competitive. And part of that was because of the play of Kyle Filipowski, who finished with a career-high 29 points to go along with 10 rebounds, his fourth straight double-double, and 4 of 8 from three-point range. Really needed those shooting numbers from Kyle Filipowski, and Duke got him.
Well, he started the game off. I mean, if he had a shot, he had a putback. I think he had an offensive rebound and putback. Very next possession, he gets the steal and the run out with a dunk. And, we've spoken about this before earlier in the season, JJ, that I feel like Filipowski needs to get out early. He needs to see the ball go in the basket, early on in the game. And he did that this game, and you could see the confidence level. He got in a little bit of foul trouble, there in the first half, and so he had to sit for a few minutes. But he came right back in and picked up where he left off. And so, then obviously, we'd be remiss in talking about this game and not talking about the fact that they're with under 30 seconds to go in the game, unintentional, definitely accidental, but he gets literally punched in the throat.
Yeah.
And so this game, once again, even Seth Greenberg went on Twitter last night and said, listen, it doesn't matter if it's intentional or not. Any kind of contact like that above the neck is at least a flagrant one.
It's got to be.
It is, period. Yeah. So really, Filipowski should have been shooting a couple of free throws, or I don't know, is that 1 or 2 free throws? I'm not sure what the rule is there. And we should have had the ball. And so at the end of the day, this was the Filipowski game. He had another double-double. He did get his 10th board. He shot over 50% from 2, shot 50% from 3. You know what I mean? It was just a great game for him. And, I mean, this comparison, I think, can ring true because we won't see him for 4 years. But, I mean, he really does remind us of a Christian Laettner-type player as a freshman. Obviously, we're not comparing careers.
Yeah.
But as a freshman, I mean, he's got a lot of Laettner in him.
He absolutely does. Again, the play we're talking about, you could find it on Twitter. It's all over the place in this day after Duke losing, with a lot of people trying to argue whether or not it should have been an intentional foul, a flagrant foul, whatever you want to call it. Elijah Collins for Virginia Tech hits a jump shot to go up by 2 with 13 seconds left in the basketball game, and celebrating his made attempt, kind of throws a punch, and as he's turning back to run back on defense, the punch hits Kyle Filipowski directly in the neck. Very clear when you watch the replay review, but they warrant it not enough to deem a flagrant 1, much less a flagrant 2. So Elijah Collins stays in the basketball game. He later went on to make one of 2 free throws at the free throw line to make it a 3-point game. And Filipowski, unfortunately, does not get to go to the free throw line to make a couple of shots. I will say also that earlier in the game, speaking of the free throw line directly, Jeremy Roach missed the front half of a 1-and-1, and Filipowski split a pair of free throws late down the stretch as well for Duke.
And we've been a great free throw shooting team throughout this season, so those were uncharacteristic misses. This is the second game in a row where we've missed some free throws at the end of the games. We just got away with it in the game on Saturday. And so, just a tough game all around. You hate going to Cassell Coliseum. You hate playing there. And Duke's going to have to get this monkey off their back. I don't know what it's going to take, but I'm in full favor of Coach Shire just sticking up for his guys and pulling a Coach K and just purposefully getting that technical foul.
Yeah.
Just showing his team and the fan base that, like, hey, we're not gonna sit back. We're not gonna let this happen. I think tonight the Filipowski no call. I don't know if Coach Shire understood how blatant it was, because obviously he's there coaching. Like, he doesn't.
In the moment, it's so hard. Yeah,
exactly. I think if he goes back and watches that replay, Like there could be he really could have warranted just absolutely losing it on that play. And like I said, Duke fans would have been cool with it. So
yeah, he kept it together. Duke, however, did not down the stretch. They lose 78-75. Blue Devils now 14-6. The new AP poll came out this past week, yesterday as well. Duke was not in the top 25. However, if you continued it, Duke was right there at 26. So they were just on the outside looking in. I'm sure this loss will not help the Blue Devils in that favor of climbing back into the top 25. Let's take our first time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by a very new and exciting sponsor here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are so fired up about this. FanDuel, a new proud presenting sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network and Locked On Blue Devils. Make every moment mean more. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets. Win or lose, all you have to do right now is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. 21 and older in select states. First online real money wager only. Again, FanDuel, a new proud presenting sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. JJ Jackson here alongside my pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Josh, what's so tough about this? It's Tuesday. It's really early in the week. And yet we've already had one game played here for the Blue Devils, which means we don't have as much time to focus on the Duke win over Miami that they had over the weekend at home inside Cameron Indoor Stadium. A really impressive win for the Blue Devils. A close game again. Duke only wins by 2 over the Hurricanes. But because they had such a quick turnaround and because you lose the back half of that 2-game stretch, you can't celebrate that win as quickly. It just doesn't mean as much knowing what happened in this Virginia Tech game.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be in the house Saturday for that game. And
outstanding.
Just a really good Cameron environment. And once again, Duke's undefeated at Cameron. And that's kind of odd because Cameron had not been, it had kind of lost a little bit of its home court advantage there over the last few years. But Duke's undefeated at home. But at the end of the day, this team's got to go play on the road. And they got to win games in hostile environments. They've got to win games where the crowd's coming up against them. And, they really – I think Filipowski is the answer, but he can't do but so much. There's got to be that dog, man. There's got to be that, we saw it last year with a guy like Paulo. Like, there's got to be a guy that's like, give me the ball, get out of the way, and I'm going to take this. You know what I mean? I'm going to take this big shot.
Yeah.
And you can't fault him. Filipowski actually found Proctor and got an open 3. In that possession there with under 30 seconds to go. I actually thought that was a great look. He had no one in front of him, so you can't fault him for that. But, man, it's just unfortunate. It's like we just can't catch the break when we need to.
Really wanted to catch that break so that Duke could try and put together another winning streak here. Blue Devils will be back in action this upcoming Saturday in Atlanta at Georgia Tech, so a 2-game road trip here for the Blue Devils playing away from home. I want to talk about Cameron Indoor, though, because they have been so impressive there, unbeaten. As you said, things have started to fall off the last few years. I want to go to a specific moment that I just thought of right here, Josh. Could we tie this back to the Zion Williamson game inside Cameron Indoor since the kind of drop-off? I'm having fun here because you think about it, and the following year, the tournament does not happen because COVID-19 cancels it. In that regular season, Duke loses at home to Stephen F. Austin, their first non-conference home loss in forever. The next year, don't even make it to the tournament. Last year's team with Paulo and company had a couple losses. I think we might be able to make that correlation that this goes all the way back to Zion's shoe.
Well, I agree. Obviously the Zion Williamson year, it was a show.
Yes.
And I got to several games that year as well. I will say this though, that like, I think it's a longer, so like old head Duke fans, they're always going to talk about like, after those 91-92 seasons where like the entire bowl around Cameron was students. You know what I mean? Like those are the glory days.
Yeah.
Those days aren't coming back. But what I will say, and I think it was getting this way a little bit before Zion's year, but then Zion came and he was like a show, a talent show all on his own. So you didn't see it as bad that year, but like you would see the ends of the student section, become, open up. You'd see like 55-year-old men standing in the student section, every now and then on a regular season ACC game. But I do think that this year, and I will say this, there has been a concerted effort by the students at Duke. This is by far the best Cameron year since Zion. By far. Cameron's loud. The students are back to their ways. And it seems like that Coach Shire has connected with the students on that level. I'm assuming that's what it is. And the students really support this team. And the team has responded by playing really good basketball at home.
You're listening to Locked On Blue Devils. I'm JJ Jackson alongside Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. So, Josh, I got to talk about this Duke team because they do have a little bit of time off before their game on Saturday against Georgia Tech, and then it won't be long before we're playing those exact North Carolina Tar Heels. Time to get back to a big showdown where Zion's shoe exploded with President Obama in the house and such. But talking about the Duke team, in Saturday's game against Miami, Jeremy Roach comes back after missing 3 games, had 14 points for the Blue Devils in that one. However, only 6 points last night against Virginia Tech. All in all, what does this mean for the Blue Devils to have Roach back there in the lineup?
I mean, it's definitely important. He played a really, really solid floor game in the Miami game. And, he was not bad in the Virginia Tech game last night. Wasn't terrible, but he just didn't assert himself. Not everybody can score. If Filipowski is going to be putting the ball in the basket like he is, he's obviously going to get his shots. I do like the fact that Jeremy's able to play off the ball a little bit more now that it seems like we really have moved to Tyrese Proctor handling the ball a lot. Tyrese pushes the ball. The ball moves on offense a whole lot better, in my opinion, when Tyrese Proctor is in the game. And it allows Jeremy to play off the ball a little bit. And we have seen this. What he did do last night was he finished around the rim. I think all 6 of his points, if I'm not mistaken, I know 2 of them were drives where he was going up against taller guys, and he was able to finish. And so he's important, man. He really is. He's got to make sure he continues to focus on defense. There were just a couple of little lapses last night, especially in the second half. He went under a screen where Couture hit a big 3 late in the second half. Yeah, and it was just a mental lapse, man. You can't go under screens when you're guarding Hunter Couture. Like, you got to fight through them, fight over them. And so, the little things like that. But listen, he's the captain. He's got the experience. We know this after watching him down the stretch last year. He's got a clutch gene in him that he can activate, and Duke's going to need it if Duke's going to get where they want to get this year. There's going to be games where Jeremy Roach has got to be vintage Jeremy Roach from last season.
Yeah, and you take a look at this Duke team moving forward, again, barring the significance of this Tariq Whitehead injury. That's one less guard, ball-dominant player that's out there for Duke. And so they're desperately going to need Jeremy Roach to be more involved once again and to be effective, not only as a scorer for this Duke team, but also setting up the offense. Tyrese Proctor, his three-point shooting, I think has been a little bit better over the last few weeks. I think he's been more selective in the attempts that he's taking. Still needs to kind of improve his overall shooting numbers. But all in all, Josh, I mean, those are the guys with Whitehead possibly out for a while that you want to see step up moving forward, are those guys at that guard spot. And someone like, people have been calling for Jaden Schutt to get some play, even beyond him. How about a player like Jacob Grandison, who's out there for 9 minutes in the basketball game and only puts up one shot attempt for the Blue Devils, finished minus 17 in that plus-minus stat.
Yeah, I mean, Grandison's got, as a grad transfer, he has got to assert himself better. I don't know what it is. Obviously, he can shoot the 3 from the corner. But, I mean, we had kind of heard from Illinois that he was like a lockdown defender. And I don't know that we've seen that much this season from him. But somebody's got to step up. I have a Jaden Schutt speech.
Okay.
JJ, are you cool with this?
I love these. Okay. Yeah. I don't know what's
So,
coming, but I'm all for
you don't
this.
know. This is straight up. I've been thinking about this, and what a great platform to say this. Let me list off some names. When I list off these names, I am not comparing Jaden Schutt to them as far as like success. I'm talking about skill set. Okay, so let me mention some names.
Yeah.
JJ Redick. Okay. Luke Kennard. Okay. And let's say to a lesser degree, Grayson Allen.
All right.
Grayson's a little more like I don't know. He takes the ball to the basketball. Let me mention another one. Andre Dawkins. Okay. So those are 4 of arguably the best shooters that Duke has ever had. All 4 of those basketball players were bad defenders. They all 4 struggled. JJ Redick couldn't defend a parked car for most of his career. And he would tell you that. He didn't even start thinking about defense until he went to the NBA and realized he wasn't going to play, especially for Stan Van Gundy, if he couldn't play defense. Luke Kennard was an Olay defender. Grayson Allen, all the way up through his senior year, was a lazy defender. Andre Dawkins was not a defender. So here's my thing. Coach K, back in those days, valued the swag and the confidence on the offensive side of the ball, and he dealt with the deficiency on the defensive side of the ball. And so, like, I think that's my plea to this coaching staff. Like, you have the potential to not Joey Baker this kid.
Yeah.
Like, you have the potential to show this kid that you believe in him. We know he can shoot the ball. And if he's not a great defender, so what? Like, we got 4 other guys on that court that can help out. My thing is, I think we need to show that we believe in shoot, that we believe that he can be an elite scorer, and we need to deal with the fallout that comes of it.
Yeah.
And so there's nobody else on that roster other than Kyle Filipowski, especially with Whitehead being injured now. Nobody else on that roster with the potential to just fill it up like Jaden Shoot. And so that's my plea. Like, listen, if Luke Kennard can come in for 2 years and just get these long leashes and do whatever he wants to and shoot and play Olay defense, like let's let Jaden do the same thing. So that's my plea. Every Duke shooter that we've ever had that's been an elite shooter has always struggled on defense. And guess what? We were okay.
We were okay at the end of the day. Yep. I'm there with you. I've been calling for Jaden Shoot minutes since the preseason, forever, as you well know here on the program. So I absolutely echo your remarks there for Jaden Shoot and would love to see him get in the basketball game a little bit more because, like you said, Josh, at worst case, the defense kind of stays the same as it has been at key moments. And best case, you're getting more offense and more three-point shooting ability because this team has been really, really bad shooting the basketball this season. All right, so a turnaround for Duke Saturday at Georgia Tech, another team that is not going to steal any headlines, so to speak, in the conference this season. It's a road game. You're going to Atlanta, but nonetheless another game that Duke needs to gear up for, and they need to find a way to win.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that Duke is in this position, but now, in my opinion, the rest of the way in the ACC, you're almost looking at every game as a must-win. I mean, you can't go on a losing streak.
Amen.
This team goes on a losing streak, and they're going to be struggling come March. And so, it's a game where this team's got to figure out what the identity of who they're going to be. They got to go into once again another road environment where the crowd's going to be up. There's going to be more people at this Georgia Tech basketball game than there's been at any Georgia Tech basketball game all season. There's going to be some player on this roster that's going to just ridiculously shoot the ball like they've not shot the ball all season. You just got to be prepared for it, and you got to understand that's what's going to happen, and you got to punch back, and you got to win the game.
Will Jose Alvarado and Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram watch this game together? Will they have a wager on this matchup, you think, now that they're on the Pelicans together?
They need to, and I will say this. If there was a player that I disliked more in college and like more now in the NBA, it's Jose Alvarado. Like, that dude is so
That's brilliant.
Because I'm a Pelicans fan now because of Zion and BI.
Absolutely.
So whenever Jose Alvarado comes in, I'm like, yes. Like, I can't wait to see the Grand Theft Alvarado plays where he sneaks up behind guys and, like, he's just up at everybody's grill, man. I mean, he's the one guy that can, like, punk Chris Paul, right? Because Chris Paul punks everybody else. He can punk a guy like Chris Paul. And so, yeah, this will be interesting. I do remember those couple of years at Georgia Tech and that one game where they beat us and Alvarado just man, he just went crazy, went nuts on us. And I was so frustrated. He would do his he would play the banjo or whatever after he hit a three. I'm like, man, I wanted to slap that guy. But yeah, that'd be interesting to see if they have some sort of wager on this game.
Speaking of NBA, final thoughts here for everyone out there. Did want to share, I was at a game this past weekend, was in the ATL
Nice.
for the Hornets-Hawks games at State Farm Arena. So saw 4 Duke Blue Devils in that one. Mason Plumlee had like the best game of the season so far that he's had with 25 points. Mark Williams is playing more for Charlotte. AJ Griffin is playing crunch time minutes for the Atlanta Hawks, and Jalen Johnson was making some shots as well. So fun night there in the ATL on Saturday for 4 former Blue Devils. And this upcoming Saturday, we hope that it's a fun night in the ATL for Duke as well.
No doubt, no doubt. How about Mark Williams, man? They're finally giving him some minutes.
Gosh, it's been necessary, and he's
taking
taking advantage.
He is. He's showing them exactly what we saw while he was in Durham, and so I love to see it.
I love it. Josh, thanks so much for the time as always. Looking forward to talking with you again next week, okay?
All right, JJ, have a good night, man.
That's my good pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. As always, go support what those guys have going on at the Section 17 podcast. Follow me on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. Follow our show on Twitter as well at LO_Blue Devils. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.